My name is Claire Hewitt. I am 41 years old, and when I walked out of my sister's dining room last Thursday evening, I sat in my car for 11 minutes with the engine running and my hands flat on my thighs, feeling the vibration of the motor through my palms like a second heartbeat. The porch light behind me was still on. Nobody came out. Let me tell you how we got there. Before I take you back to where this started, tell me, what time is it where you are? Because I remember exactly what time it was the night everything changed. It was 7:23 p.m. on a Thursday. I know because my son texted me from the bathroom at 7:24, and the message said only two words, "Mom, come." Some moments burn the clock into your memory. The Thursday before that, a full week earlier, I was standing in the basement archive of the county assessor's office, pulling property transfer records for a commercial client disputing a boundary easement. That's what I do. I'm a title examiner. I trace ownership chains backward through decades of filings, deeds, quitclaims, and trust instruments until I find the point where someone's story stops matching the paper. I've done it for 16 years. I can read a grantor index the way some people read a novel. I see the gaps before I see the words. I notice when a notary stamp is from a jurisdiction that doesn't match the signer's stated address. I notice when a document references a parcel number that was retired 3 years before the date on the filing. That skill had exposed fraudulent claims on properties worth millions in professional settings. It was about to expose a fraudulent claim on my family. The smell hit me first, always does. Every county archive smells the same: old paper, toner from the 1990s copier they never replaced, and the faint chemical sweetness of document preservation spray. I was kneeling on a concrete floor pulling a volume from 2019 when my phone buzzed. My sister Margot. Dinner Thursday, my house, bring dessert. Don't bring that potato thing. Bring something the kids will actually eat. I didn't respond for 40 minutes, not because I was upset, because I was already thinking about the last dinner, and the one before that. Let me go back further. Margot is 3 years older than me. She married Grant Belworth when she was 26, a man who arrived in our family with the particular confidence of someone who has always been told his instincts are worth more than other people's research. He sells commercial real estate. He talks about properties the way some men talk about conquests. Margot absorbed his language within the first year. Our portfolio, our holdings, our dining table seats 14, we had it custom built, I noticed. I always noticed. My son Elijah is 14. His father left when Elijah was 3, and for the 11 years since, Margot and Grant's house has been the center of every holiday, every birthday, every family event. Their house is large enough to be a venue. Their kitchen has 2 ovens. Their dining table, the custom one, is a slab of reclaimed walnut that Grant mentions the price of at least once per gathering. $3,800. He paid for it in cash. He wants you to know that. For 11 years, I drove 40 minutes each way to that table. I brought what was requested. I sat where I was placed. When Margot rearranged the seating chart 2 Christmases ago and put Elijah at a folding card table in the sunroom with her friends' toddlers, he was 12, I said nothing. When she told me my contribution to our mother's assisted living expenses should be adjusted upward because Grant and I already carry so much of the family's social obligations, I wrote the check. When she informed me that Elijah couldn't attend her daughter's birthday party because it's really a girls' event and he makes Chloe uncomfortable, I drove home and told my son we'd do something else that day. I absorbed it, year after year. The irony is that I spend my professional life identifying exactly when a chain of title breaks, the precise moment someone's claim to something stops being legitimate. I could see it in strangers' paperwork from 3 decades away. I could not see it at my own sister's dinner table. Until last Thursday. Elijah and I arrived at 6:45. I carried a lemon tart from the bakery on Elm, $34, because Margot had specified, not homemade, the presentation matters. Grant opened the door. He was wearing a polo shirt with the logo of his brokerage embroidered on the chest. He looked past me at Elijah and said, "Shoes off on the mat, new floors." No greeting, no hello, new floors. We sat. The table was set for 11. Margot, Grant, their 2 children, my mother, Margot's in-laws, a couple I didn't recognize, and me. I counted the place settings twice. There were 11. There were 12 people in the house. Margot came out of the kitchen with a wine glass already in hand. She glanced at Elijah standing behind my chair. Her face did something small, a micro-calculation, lips pressing together for half a second. Then she said it. Elijah, honey, we didn't set a place for you tonight. This is an adults-only dinner. There's pizza in the kitchen if you want to eat in the den. Her daughter Chloe was sitting at the table. Chloe is 13. I stood there with my hand on the back of my chair. My fingertips pressed into the wood hard enough that I could feel the grain. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Something inside me had gone very quiet and very precise, the way it goes when I find a document that doesn't match and I need to understand why before I say a single word. That's fine, I said. Elijah looked at me. His face was the face of a boy who has been told he doesn't belong in rooms before and has learned not to make it anyone else's problem. He nodded once, picked up his jacket from the back of the chair, and walked toward the kitchen. I watched him go. Then I sat down, and I ate dinner, and I smiled at the appropriate moments, and I drove home at 9:15 with my son silent in the passenger seat. That night, after Elijah went to his room, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I didn't cry. I opened the county assessor's portal. I typed in Margot and Grant's address. I don't know exactly what I was looking for, but 16 years of title examination has taught me that when something feels wrong in a property, when the story doesn't match the structure, there is always paper that explains why. What I found in the first 20 minutes was layer 1, the obvious insult. Grant and Margot's house, the one with the custom table, the 2 ovens, the new floors, was purchased in 2017. The deed listed both names, but the down payment, $94,000, came from a wire transfer I could trace through the settlement statement on file. The originating account was a trust. Our mother's trust. The trust I was named co-trustee of but had never been asked to approve a disbursement from. I stared at that settlement statement for a long time. The numbers were running themselves. I hadn't asked them to. The house that my son was not welcome to sit at the table in, the house with the floors too precious for his shoes, was partially purchased with funds that belonged equally to both of us, and I had never been told. Then I found something else. Over the following 3 weeks, I pulled every document I could access through my professional databases and public records. I wasn't emotional about it. I was methodical. I made a folder. I labeled it by date. I printed everything. I have 16 years of training that says, when in doubt, print and preserve the original access timestamp. Layer 2 emerged on day 4. The trust disbursement wasn't an emergency withdrawal or a one-time accommodation. It was one of 6. 6 disbursements across 4 years, totaling $267,000, all authorized with a single trustee's signature, Margot's. Every single one predated a major purchase: the house, a kitchen renovation, Grant's office lease deposit, Chloe's private school enrollment fee, a vacation property deposit later canceled but never refunded. Each disbursement had an attached memo line. They all said the same thing: family maintenance, approved per terms. I called the trust administrator, a small fiduciary firm in Greenfield that our father had established the account with before he died. I identified myself as co-trustee and asked for the full disbursement history. The woman on the phone paused. Miss Hewitt, we have you listed as inactive co-trustee per a 2016 amendment. We were told you declined the role. I had never declined anything. I had never been asked. That was layer 3, the older pattern. I requested the 2016 amendment. It arrived by secure email the next morning. It bore my signature, or rather, it bore a signature that said, Claire the 1000th, Hewitt, in handwriting that leaned slightly too far left, with a middle initial I haven't used since I was 19. My legal signature uses Claire Hewitt, with no middle initial. It has for 22 years. The notary stamp on the amendment was from a jurisdiction 200 miles from where I lived in 2016. I pulled the notary's commission record. The notary was Grant's former business partner's wife. She let her commission lapse in 2018. The document was almost perfect. Almost. But the slant was wrong, and the initial was wrong, and the notary's jurisdiction was wrong, and 16 years of reading signatures had made those 3 errors as visible to me as a missing wall in a building. Layer 4. I found it on the 14th day. The trust wasn't just being drawn down for family maintenance. The most recent disbursement, $43,000, dated 8 months before that Thursday dinner, went not to Margot and Grant's joint account but to a holding LLC registered in Grant's name alone. The LLC had acquired a small commercial property that Grant's brokerage was now listing for sale at $310,000. He was using our mother's trust to fund his own investment portfolio, cycling the capital through his wife's fraudulent trustee authority, and listing the assets under his own name. And that's what I was carrying when I walked into that room. I chose Thanksgiving. 5 weeks after that Thursday dinner, the whole family would be there, at Margot's table, the walnut table, the table my son wasn't welcome at. I arrived with Elijah. I brought a pie. Margot opened the door and said, "You're early." I said, "I know." I set the pie on the counter and I waited until everyone was seated. 11 adults, 3 children, including Elijah, who I insisted would sit at the table this time. Margot's mouth did that pressing thing again, but she said nothing. I waited until the first course was finished. Then I said, "I have something for the family to see." I placed a manila folder on the walnut table. 6 pages, the settlement statement, the trust disbursement history, the 2016 amendment with the forged signature, the notary commission lapse, the LLC registration, the listing agreement under Grant's name. Margot looked at the folder. She didn't open it. "Claire, what is this?" "Open it." She opened it. Her face didn't change for 4 seconds. Then it did. Grant leaned over. "What is that?" His voice was still casual, still the voice of a man who believes he manages the room. "That," I said, "is the complete disbursement history of Mom's trust." Grant sat back. "Those were approved disbursements. Margot had authority. Margot had authority because someone forged my signature to remove me as co-trustee." Margot's voice went thin and high. "That's not what happened. You were overwhelmed. You said you didn't want the responsibility. I was protecting you." "Show me the email where I said that." "It was a conversation, years ago. I don't have." The amendment was notarized by Sandra Kellogg in Whitmore County. I've never been to Whitmore County. Sandra is Grant's former partner's wife. Grant stood up. "This is inappropriate. This is Thanksgiving dinner. You're embarrassing yourself." Image management, tactic 1. My mother was staring at the papers. Her hands were shaking slightly. I kept my voice level. "Sit down, Grant. You've always resented what we built." Margot's voice was shaking now. "You couldn't handle that we were successful and you were struggling. This is jealousy. This is what this is." Reframing. Tactic 2. The LLC in your name, Grant. The one you funded with $43,000 from a 78-year-old woman's trust. The property at 4412 Birch Industrial. You listed it last month for $310,000. Would you like me to read the listing agreement out loud? After everything I've done for this family. Margot was crying now. After every dinner, every holiday, every time I opened my home. Family loyalty appeal. Tactic 3. I waited. I did not respond. I let the silence fill the room until it pressed against the walls. And then my mother's attorney spoke. I had invited Arthur Phelan. He was seated at the far end of the table. Margot had assumed he was Grant's colleague when he arrived. Arthur is 73 years old and has administered fiduciary matters in this county for 4 decades. He was the one who set up the trust with my father in 2003. He had brought his own copies. "I can confirm," Arthur said, straightening his glasses, "that no amendment was ever presented to our office with both trustees' verified signatures. The 2016 amendment was filed directly with the county without our involvement, which is itself a procedural violation. I've been asked to notify the family that a formal review has been initiated." The room was silent. Grant's hand was flat on the walnut table, the $3,800 table. His face had gone the color of old paper. I looked at Margot. I said one sentence. "You decided that my son didn't deserve a seat at a table you purchased with money you stole from our mother." I did not say another word. I collected the folder. I took my son's hand. We left. The weeks that followed were not dramatic. They were administrative. Arthur Phelan filed a formal complaint with the county recorder's office regarding the forged amendment. The fiduciary firm froze all remaining trust assets pending review. $112,000 remained. Grant's LLC was flagged by his brokerage's compliance department. His listing at 4412 Birch Industrial was suspended. Within 3 weeks, the brokerage placed him on administrative leave pending internal review. Margot called me 4 times in the first week. I did not answer. On the 5th call, she left a voicemail that said, "I'm sorry about the dinner. I should have set a place for Elijah." As if the dinner was the thing, as if any of this was about a chair. Grant and Margot's mortgage, the one partially funded by the trust, was referred to their lender's fraud investigation unit after Arthur's filing made the settlement statement's funding source a matter of record. I don't know what happened with that review. I didn't follow it. I didn't need to. My mother moved to a smaller assisted living facility, closer to my house in January. I drive 12 minutes to see her now, instead of 40 minutes to see her at Margot's table. She has her own room, with a window that faces a courtyard with a birch tree. She asked me once if Margot was coming to visit. I told her the truth. I didn't know. Grant's in-laws, the Bellworths, stopped attending Margot's gatherings after Thanksgiving. His mother Helen called me in December. She said, "I didn't know about the trust." I said, "I believe you." She said, "I should have asked more questions when the house was purchased." I said, "Yes." She didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. But she sent Elijah a birthday card in February, with a $50 bill inside, and a note that said, "You are always welcome at our table." It was a small brave thing. It did not fix what came before it. Margot's friend Dana, the woman who had been at that Thursday dinner, the one I didn't recognize, reached out to me in January. She said she'd been at 3 of Margot's dinners over the past year, and had always felt something was wrong with how Elijah was treated. She said she'd once asked Margot about it, and Margot had said, "Claire enables him, he needs to learn social boundaries." Dana said she hadn't pushed back. She said she was sorry. I said, "Thank you for telling me." I did not say it was okay. It wasn't. But Dana had been the one to give Arthur Phelan's name to my mother's care coordinator when I asked who had helped establish the original trust, a small connection that had made the rest possible. Her complicity and her small act of help existed in the same person. That's how it usually works. In March, I enrolled in a weekend ceramics class at the community college. I had wanted to take it for 6 years. Every previous fall and spring, the class conflicted with Margot's Saturday dinners, the ones that weren't optional, the ones where absence meant a phone call from our mother saying Margot was worried about me. The first Saturday I walked into that studio and smelled wet clay and kiln heat. I stood still for a moment, with my hands at my sides. Nobody asked me to bring anything. Nobody counted the chairs. I just sat down and started. Elijah started eating dinner at our own kitchen table without his shoes off, without checking if he was welcome, without waiting to see if someone had counted him. Some Thursday nights I make lemon tart from the bakery on Elm, not because anyone demanded it, but because he asked for it once and I said yes. It costs $34. It sits on our table because we want it there. I think about what silence does inside a family structure. Not the silence of peace, the silence of compliance. For 11 years I was quiet at that table because I believed that keeping my place meant keeping my family. What I didn't understand, what my profession should have taught me years earlier, was that a chain of title only holds when every signature on it is legitimate. The moment someone forges your name to remove you from the record, there is no chain. There is only someone else's claim, built on paper you never signed. Consequences are not revenge. Consequences are what was always owed. The trust disbursements were always going to come to light. The forged signature was always going to be discovered. The only variable was whether I would be the one to find it, or whether it would surface after my mother was gone and the money was spent and the record was closed. I found it because I was trained to find it. But I acted on it because my son stood in that dining room and was told he did not belong in a house built with his grandmother's money. That was not a dinner party decision. That was the last entry in a ledger that had been running for years. Last Thursday, exactly 5 weeks ago, I sat at my kitchen table at 7:23 p.m. Elijah was across from me, eating lemon tart with a fork, telling me about a project for school. The engine of my car was off, the porch light was our own, nobody was coming out and nobody needed to. If someone in your life has been deciding who gets a seat and who doesn't, and you've been accepting the assignment, what would it take for you to stop arriving early, bringing what was requested, and sitting where you were placed? And what would you find if you finally looked at the paper underneath the table? This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, education, and dramatic reflection. We hope it reminded you that your dignity is not negotiable, and that setting a boundary, even a painful one, can be an act of love for yourself and everyone the pattern would have reached next.